Charlotte, you are always talking highly of the importance of diversity and inclusion in those dialogues. David Nabarro stressed the importance, but how to do it? You have the experience of it, Charlotte. Any tips, advice you want to share with our participants, please?
Thank you very much, Florence. I think the first thing is to realize why inclusivity and diversity are so important for the topic you're wanting to bring. What makes a dialogue valuable, what makes it transformative, it's when different perspectives, people who don't necessarily agree or who don't necessarily usually speak to each other, can come together and start thinking differently about the topics at hand. And in many cases in food systems, because they're so broad, elements are not so connected. Maybe people working in agriculture will be thinking of certain issues without coordinating or thinking of what the health colleagues are talking about or what priorities they have to address. Same thing with the environment. They're going to be trying to protect the local soils, but at the same time, not necessarily thinking of what implications would be for health and so on. So breaking silos is a very important part, an outcome of the dialogue process. But dialogues can actually be designed to strengthen silos and echo chambers. If you invite people who agree, we see sometimes dialogue being used, to be quite blunt, as more advocacy events. But they can also be designed to be very transformative. And usually the diversity of stakeholders, the diversity of sectors that are represented is a key element of that transformation. Now, how to make it work? Because it's not easy to go against some of these entrenched silos or different views. Well, first of all, think broadly. If you have identified your topic or general area of interest, try to think creatively. Who could we bring in? Farmers, consumers. How about somebody from the transport industry? How about parents from the Parent-Teacher Association who are uncomfortable with the school meals programs? Or think of those voices that maybe are angry or disagree, or on the contrary, are trying to fight for a super interesting proposition, but are not being heard. It can also be very useful to team up. Each of us in our organizations have access to particular networks. So if you're working, for example, from a university, you might have greater access to academia, but very little access to SMEs. Can you team up with a group of youth entrepreneurs, for example, or women entrepreneurs, or with a big industry who happens to be working in your area? So co-convene. Co-convene enables you to go across your various networks. Think of topics, as John was saying, that are attractive, not just to you, not just one part of your stakeholders, but everybody you're trying to get to the table, using language that is accessible to them. So, making it clear it's not going to be a technocrats meeting, but a conversation where everybody can engage. You may need to also make extra effort to reach out to those who are less likely to come to this kind of event. They feel intimidated, it's maybe in the town hall, and they're like, oh no, that's not for me. Pick up your phone or ask somebody who knows them well, please come along. If really you find you get stuck, we've had some colleagues in Country Dialogues, they said, okay, we're not going to have some of those farmers that are from very remote areas, but they've invited anthropologists who are working with them. You can also start thinking creatively of using social media, sometimes posting topics online and getting a broader diversity of voices through social media. So always thinking from the point of view of the people you'd like to engage. During the dialogue, the quality of the curation. So again, like as John said, the curators like Florence making us all feel welcome. The quality of the curation and facilitation is key. People need to feel comfortable. They feel that it's okay to express their views, that it's safe to disagree, that they can be heard. So that's why training or giving a session for your facilitators to encourage them to make sure everybody speaks is key. But also when you're designing the event, you may want to craft carefully the diversity of participants. Don't necessarily leave it to chance, but make sure that consumers and farmers and teachers and mayors, for example, can be represented in the same groups, because that's where the core of the conversation will take place. It's also important after the dialogue. When the report is done, I think Ambassador Cousins really emphasized that you want to know, that people will probably want to know, have they been heard? what's been done with the outcome of the discussion. So making sure the report is out, that it's understandable, that it's not maybe 50 pages, that it's accessible with the language. Maybe you can even organize a feedback session or a follow-up dialogue where people get to hear how were their inputs used, how did they contribute to the local and national conversation. And finally, two last points. We find that dialogues are most transformative when they are repeated events, because say you meet somebody you fundamentally disagree with. For example, you have a vegan promoting plant-based diets, meeting somebody from the livestock industry, and they're really in full disagreement. But they see through the conversation, that's not such a bad person, actually. He's quite nice. So if he thinks so differently, but is nice, maybe there's something there. And then they meet again and they have a slightly different conversation. And step by step like this, views can emerge, new partnerships, a desire to continue not only talking, but maybe collaborating, being creative. And a final thing, it does require you as convener, as curator, as facilitator, to try to keep that space open. Be willing to be surprised, be willing to maybe change your own views. And I think if you have that openness as you do the work of convening, curating, facilitating, people will sense it. They will sense that you're genuinely open, and that will encourage everybody to have that open-minded attitude. Thank you, Florence.